Worrying too much about fitting in will kill your potential, harm your mental health, and make you miserable. If the people around you can't accept you for who you are, change the people around you. The world needs more people that are proud of exactly who they are. And that was tweeted by Stephen Bartlett. Welcome to Tuesday's episode of the Toy Talks podcast. This Tuesday came around real quick. This Tuesday came back quicker than Matt Hancock tried to revive his political career by going on, is it Diary of a CEO? And that's actually hosted by and created by Stephen Bartlett. I don't know if you've listened to the episode where he interviews Matt Hancock. And anyway, actually no, we'll do it now. Okay, so I really struggle with understanding why white people so badly want to align themselves with struggle that they've never had before. How can you say, Matt Hancock, that, and I'm like paraphrasing here, you know, he came from like, you know, growing up was difficult. It was a bit of a struggle because his parents separated when they were 2, and both of his parents are well-to-do, by the way, but okay, fine, you know. I can't imagine how psychologically it would affect you growing up with your parents separating and everything. Fine. But then you went to some of the best schools. You took your GCSEs, I think he said, a year early. And that means he went to one of these elite schools. And he was with older kids. You know, it was difficult. What? What the hell? I don't understand. What is difficult with eating cold sandwiches? What is difficult is being unable to season your food. That shit's difficult. Matt Hancock, the only difficulty he had was trying to evade taking responsibility for what happened. You know the video, the slithering hands of Jericho. Do you remember? How can you have a camera in your office, then that camera caught you cheating on your wife? We saw you and your slithering hands of Jericho moving up and down her waistline. And then you left your wife and kids. Remember, this is a person that will stand there and say that his parents separated when he was 2. So you understand the impact of that. And you lived through the impact. But you've now not only caused your children humiliation, you've now put them through that same thing. Then you want me, a listener, to now what? Empathize? I can't empathize with white privilege because I don't have any proximity to it. I can't empathize with recklessness when you are battling a pandemic. You are the health secretary, and yet you're breaking your own COVID rules. And then you're coming to tell us things are difficult. The only difficulty such people see is when they have to wake up early in the morning because the alarm's gone off. There's no difficulty. What the hell? I don't understand. But what I do understand is Matt Hancock is trying to revive his political career. And he is trying to be smart about it. And I say trying because yet again, it's another politician that treats us like we're stupid, like we can't see what he's trying to do. And yet he speaks very highly of Boris, well, of course. What does he say? Show me your friends, I'll show you who you are. Birds of a feather flocking together and all that. And my dear, his mistress is no longer mistress, it's his girlfriend. I've never heard of a married man having a girlfriend. I don't understand. What's that? That's polyamorous, isn't it? Sorry. But yeah, I just think if anybody hasn't listened to that interview, go ahead and listen to it. Let me know your views. I was actually happy with the approach by Stephen Bartlett as an interviewer. And there were difficult conversations that were had, but only made difficult because Matt Hancock, it's like he forgot why he was there. We're going to ask you about your affair and breaching COVID rules. We're going to ask you about why Boris Johnson was so quick to forgive and brush it under the carpet when you very clearly broke COVID rules. We are going to ask you about the camera that caught you in the act, literally having an affair. Yeah, he's going to ask you all those things. So I don't see how, you know, even when their hands are caught in a cookie jar, they still try and spin a narrative or try to avoid answering the direct question. This is why I could never be a politician. You know what? I am too raw to be a politician because I'm the one that will stand in the House of Parliament and say, hello, Boris, how many kids have you got this week? Because that man has many children. And I would say to Matt Hancock, Matt, is this your girlfriend or mistress? So I don't feel like I could ever be a politician, but having witnessed kind of a lot of kind of what's gone on in the media and stuff like that, I definitely feel as though, as much as my dad wanted me to get into politics before he wanted me to be a lawyer, by the way. And I think part of it was just because I was very much, very opinionated, I was very bold as a child, even though, the education system sought to beat that out of me. But I could never be, because I kind of saw, I don't know, I had a quite negative approach or thought process at the time, that being a black woman would always be like an Achilles heel into politics. Whereas now I think quite differently, but I just don't have the PC ability to be a politician or get into politics. And also as well, I don't want anybody coming to tell me about my life and my childhood and my defunct relationship with my mom and how that's contributed to who I am. I'm not ready for that. I don't want to cuss anyone out. And me, I will cuss you in the Houses of Parliament and I'll escort myself out of the front door. So there's no point in me getting into all of that. Let me just sit my ass behind the mic and produce a podcast that is befitting of my queens within my community. That is my purpose and that's what I'm focused on. But I can't kind of get into this episode without kind of talking about Child Q. And we all have read in the media and we've, seen the protests. I know some people attended the protests, and Child Q was, for me it was quite heavy. Secondary school age, and apparently the teachers said they smelled cannabis. The police was called and they strip searched her, a black child. As they strip searched her, she was asked to separate her bum cheeks. Her body parts were exposed. She squatted, all of it. She's on her period. She was asked to remove her sanitary towel because these police officers believed she had drugs on her. Now, what is very alarming is, number one, being strip searched, that the teachers allowed this to happen, and that the female police officers who were conducting the search allowed this to happen. I can't pronounce the word, the adultification of a child, where a child is not seen as a child, they're seen as an adult, and it's racially motivated because she's black. Because I guarantee you, this would never happen to a white child. It's impossible. This happened purely, in my opinion, because this child was black, of secondary school age, without an appropriate adult present to advocate for her. But what doesn't make sense is, number one, I must say no drugs were found. She has no previous affiliation with any type of drugs, this child. But if they had hypothetically found drugs, that evidence would have been inadmissible in court because they breached procedure. They did not follow adequate procedure. So any drugs they would have found, if for example there was, they wouldn't be able to use that as evidence in court because they breached procedure by not having an appropriate adult present to witness the search and advocate for this child. So then you have to ask yourself, was this just to humiliate her? Yes. Was this to degrade this child? Yes. Was this to bully and traumatize this child? Yes. And all the while this is happening, the teachers are outside the door. How could this happen? Is the question. How could this happen? I think what troubles me the most is that it's taken almost 2 years for this to come out because a report has come out of what happened. There was an investigation into what happened. So the contents of that report has now been published. That's how we're hearing about it. And it doesn't go above my head that this child is identified as Child Q because she's a child. So even the identification of Child Q, as we know her to be, is the acknowledgement that she is a child and therefore cannot be named because she's a child. So why did they not treat her like a child during this process? Because her parents were not called. This was a strip search done on school premises by 2 female police officers, while the teachers who had contacted the police said that they suspected drugs, they suspected cannabis, they said they could smell cannabis on her. They found nothing. The teachers are outside the door. So between all of these adults, none of them thought to have an adult present an independent adult present. Not one of them called her parents. So this young black girl, this child, because we have to call her what she is, was degraded to ask to remove her sanitary towel. I'm telling you, it took me a few days before I could even talk about this on social media because I was so disgusted. The adultification of a child, this is motivated by race. A child can never be seen as an adult and therefore should only ever be treated as a child. I read a statement allegedly from Child Q, which basically, and I think it was through her lawyer, that said that the family and obviously Child Q will be suing the school and the police. And I'm so happy that the family have a lawyer to advocate for them. And it's just sad. And to think this happened in a school in East London, in Hackney. And how this didn't come out 2 years ago, I don't know. Because that would have been at the height of the pandemic. Probably around, the height of the pandemic. It's just, or just before the pandemic. I just don't know. I think what this has made me realise is that black children, black girls, children are just not safe. And it's annoying and it's both upsetting to think that where a child should feel safe in schools and be protected by the teachers are the ones that will put them in vulnerable positions and will expose them to this level of trauma is honestly soul destroying. Because, what was also shared is what has happened as a direct result of what Child Q experienced that day. And, the parents of Child Q said that their child is a shadow and a shell of herself. There is some self-harm. There is just broken. And that just makes my heart ache. Especially because, I was on Clubhouse and I was listening and people, they were sharing their outrage, and somebody had said that allegedly Channel 4 were going to do an interviewing young black girls about their reaction to what's happened to Child Q, and there was a black man present and things like that, and I was really annoyed at that. I don't know if it actually happened or not. This was allegedly, this is what was going to happen last week, and I thought to myself, no. And I hope it didn't, because I didn't watch Channel 4. And I hope it didn't happen. And I hope it didn't happen because I don't think any young black girl should have to be faced in a position whereby they're expressing how, their outrage. I feel like tap the aunties in, tap the big sisters in. We'll go on the front line for our black girls, our black children. Do you know what I mean? I'm fed up of society and the way they are making black children into adults. It's that adultification of children. They're not on the front line. We as a black woman will go on the front line for our black girls. And to be honest, I'm just really heavy when I talk about this because I just don't understand how any teacher could think this is okay. And I'm going to go on record to say, as far as I'm concerned, in my opinion, I'm almost certain that those teachers are white. Because I feel like in many schools we have many Karens. And in many schools where we have many Karens, we have many assumptions. We have, I believe, a lot of disrespect towards black kids in general. But I don't understand how it can't be a white teacher that's done this. I know it's a white teacher that's done it, or white teachers that have facilitated this. Because to say a child smells of cannabis, and for me, I don't understand how this works, because the two female officers could only search the child if they had a reasonable belief, like a reasonable suspicion to believe that the child had drugs. And that reasonable suspicion has to, as far as I'm concerned, it would only be based on what the white teacher said. Because I find it very hard to believe that those teachers weren't white. I would be surprised. And it just goes to show how much weight white voices are given, and there's not enough challenge to their voices. If you suspected this child had drugs, why wasn't the first thing that you did was call the parents? Why wasn't that something you did? If you were going to call the police, you would call the parents. And then when the police got on site, you won't do anything until the parents were on site, so that they could be the adult present to advocate for that child. You strip the child of that child's dignity. And for what end? Because now this child is going to grow and mature into an adult. And yes, that, you know, I read that the child is going through therapy and everything, but that's her first introduction into the world. Because let's be honest, our managers, our line managers, CEO, CFO, CDO, CPO, they all represent what we know as the teachers of our schools. So my question is, how is child Q ever going to feel safe in any environment where she has representation of her teachers? Because for me, and I've said this before, early episodes of the podcast, I said my first introduction into the working world were my teachers. They were coming from different areas to come and teach us. They weren't from my local area. They weren't from Tottenham. Then when you go into the world of work, you're dealing with managers and bosses who we've met before, because these are the people that were teaching us. They're the representation of that. And this child now has that as her foundation. That to me is heavy. And this is the reason why when we take our children to school, I'm not a mother yet, but for me personally, and just based on conversations with my friends, my really close friends who have children, I'm hella involved in the school. I'm going to be a school governor. I'm going to be all of that. You guys are going to be here witnessing it, because I'll be coming to tell you. I'm going to be in their asses. Because I feel like young black girls, these black children, need to be protected, because clearly the teachers can't do it. I don't know if you guys follow I think they're called the Pello family on Instagram, and I can't remember the mum's name, and she's so beautiful. She recently had a baby called Nubia, so beautiful, and she was sharing a few months ago about how she took her daughter Maya, and I think Maya, I can't remember how old Maya is. I think Maya should be about 6 or 7. I stand to be corrected, but quite young. And she took her child to school, and the teacher saw Maya and called Maya by a different name, obviously another name of another black child. And the mum corrected her. It's either she didn't get Maya's name wrong. She got the mother's name wrong. So the mum dropped Maya into school, and the teacher called Maya's mum by a name that didn't belong to her. She said, "Oh, that the parents look alike," and she said this in front of Maya. So what the mum did is she waited until she was out of Maya's earshot, and she said to the teacher, she tried to correct the teacher. The teacher was just making justification for her mistake rather than just acknowledging that she made a mistake. You can't say, "Oh, you look like," that's racist, because not all black women look alike, not all black kids look alike. Come on. Then I don't know what the follow-up was of that was, because I'm gonna ask the mum, because I follow her on Instagram. I'm gonna ask her, because she did say that she tried to talk to the teacher. The teacher was all defensive and everything, and them white tears were coming out. So the mum decided that she's gonna take it further. But I don't know if we've heard the follow-up, so I'm gonna ask her. But the reason I give that example is, even on that micro level, it's still quite macro, because these black kids, they're going into school and they're trying to find their way in the world. they're dealing with a lot at their age, hypersensitive to race, hypersensitive to identity. And I say this also because Kay's goddaughter, she must be about 5, very self-aware, very aware of herself, and she understands identity. She knows her name, she knows who she is. And I was shocked at that age that she would be so aware, because at 5 years old, I wasn't that aware. But I understand that children nowadays are exposed to social media. They're exposed to certain things that I wasn't when I was growing up. But this is even more reason why we have a duty to support Black children as they mature into who they are. Because some of these teachers, and I say some and not all, some of these teachers don't know the power that they wield. In that, a teacher could shape a way a child sees themselves. I still remember my teachers. I still remember I shared with you early podcasts where I wet myself trying to spell a word that a teacher humiliated me in front of the class, and I wet myself. I still remember the teacher, one of my favorite teachers, who always took an interest in asking me how I was. Or when I came back from holiday, I'd gone to Nigeria with my family, and I was very younger, and she asked me about my holiday, and she asked me to tell my other friends in the class about my trip. And I was so proud, and I look back at that now, and I think to myself, that was so important for me to do, to share where I went on holiday with. I went to Nigeria because that was my identity, and she was looking for me to share my identity with the class. So teachers have so much power, because for certain hours of the day, sometimes you could go as far as to say the teachers spend more time with your children than you do, to an extent, in the week at least. So the power that these teachers wield is very strong. These teachers I think there are some teachers who don't actually recognize that these children, the foundation into the world comes through their teaching. And as parents got to trust that their children are being treated with fairness, dignity, and respect. So to hear that Child Q in a secondary school is being treated in this way, we then have to question a lot of how some of these white teachers are teaching. Because when those white teachers were standing outside while this child was being strip searched, what were they saying to the other students that were asking them or looking at them as to what they're doing? Then my question is, when the strip search happened, did they expect this child to go back in the classroom to learn? I've got questions. Have these teachers been suspended? Are they still teaching? Because for me personally, I don't want my child in that class because I'm scared. If they smell something now, they could say that my child has something. I couldn't deal with that. It's important that we talk about this here, because I feel as though teachers need to be held, some teachers need to be held a lot more accountable. And some of these white teachers, it's not enough for them to go to these equal opportunity courses and things like that. I think Black parents, we need to get on their asses. We need to get in their asses. I've got godchildren. Believe me, their parents know me already. I'll find myself in that school because I'm not playing any games. When I have my children, better that when you hear my child's last name, better that you just step back, because I'm not playing that game. As Black people, we have a lot of work that we do inside the home. But what we can't be doing is doing that work inside the home, and then also adding further work, because we're trying to undo the things that the teachers are doing in the classroom. Gone are the days when some of these teachers are actually teaching with passion. Some of them are not doing it. I have friends who are teachers, and I would be so blessed to have them teach my child, or my children, or my godchildren. I'd be so blessed. But to think that there are some white teachers that have this discriminatory thoughts, and you take out on a child, that's abuse. That is abuse. I feel as though what Child Q went through is abuse at the hands of the police and at the hands of teachers. And while everyone's keeping everybody's identity, the only person's identity that needs to be protected is child Q. We should know who those police officers are, and we should know who those teachers are. Especially the teachers, we should know. Because from what I'm hearing, they're still teaching children. And it's dangerous, especially when there's no accountability. What are the consequences of the adults who were present and allowed this to happen? There's adults that were present that facilitated this to happen. They need to be held to account. They are being sued by the child Q's family. Great. And what else? And this is the problem, isn't it? We know that this couldn't happen to a white child. We know that. But why is it that this has made headlines for 1 week? And then the media now will move on to the next story. And as a community, we need to keep this story alive. Because if we don't, they forget. And if they forget, they'll say it didn't happen. Also, to add, it's been a sad week. 800 P&O ferry staff was sacked. Yeah? And all I'm going to say is this. P&O Ferries is owned by a Dubai-based company. And this Dubai-based company, apparently 24 hours before, sent an email to, I think it was to, what do you call it now? The union. To advise the union that this was happening. So the government were advised of this. Because obviously P&O Ferries is quite a big company, and it directly would have impacted kind of ferries and stuff like that within the UK. On the Thursday, they were told their staff, everybody stand down, no service for a few hours. And then they told staff on Zoom call that they're they're being let go of with immediate effect. 800 staff. No process was followed. And I say this, but it depends also the jurisdiction of their contracts. So if their contracts are UK-based contracts, they're going to take them to the cleaners, those staff members who were let go of. Due process was not followed. There was no consultation. There's no inclusion of consultation with the union. And the first time these staff members heard about this was when they was all collectively in a Zoom call being told that they're going to be made redundant effective immediately. Whatever the reason is, cash flow, whatever, that there is a process. And if you want to get to understand a bit more about redundancy, I do have the redundancy masterclass on the toytalks.com website. Go there and read your rights, especially if you have a UK-based contract. There is procedure. There's legal employment law procedure that needs to be followed when a company intends to make staff redundant. And as an employee, there are things within that you need to be doing as part of your consultation process. There's questions that you need to be asking. If you go into the show notes and look at the episodes, I talk about managing redundancies. I had to help somebody with a redundancy, and they got a very healthy payout. They had to sign a non-disclosure agreement, but they got a healthy payout because that company did not follow due process as part of the redundancy and cut corners and did so many things. And this woman wasn't having it. She approached me. At that time, I didn't have a redundancy masterclass. God so kind of had the time and the ability to help her, helped her. She got a nice, healthy payout. Yeah, nice and healthy. Because you see, in this country, when you don't follow the rules and you catch them with the evidence, they must pay. That's the fact. You can't breach the rules that you have invoked or you created and think I'm not going to use those same rules against you to get paid. You're going to pay me. You're going to also pay me for my hurt feelings and the stress of having to even enforce your own rules that you should already know. You're going to pay. Yeah, that's right. Also in the news, Marcus Rashford, who is a very well-known football player, he also does a lot of charitable things in the community. And they've been playing a match, and you know the Marcus Rashford's team lost. I don't even know what team he plays for. So as they were going back to their coach, some people, you know, they were outside, they were going to the coach. Some of the fans, you know, some of these fans are so committed to being fans, but they're not even committed to their wives the way they're committed to football. I don't understand. Anyway, they started hurling abuse at him. So Marcus Rashford now turned around, like kind of confronted them. He was away from them, but he was like kind of confronted them. not in a, I wouldn't say in a bad or aggressive way. He just, you know, you can't just abuse people for free and think, no, he's not a robot. And then within hours, Marcus Rashford puts out a statement apologising. And there was something Ian Wright said. So Ian Wright, retired Arsenal football player, everyone knows who Ian Wright is. Ian Wright took to social media and he said, Rashford, why are you apologising? If people are going to talk shit, you're allowed to defend yourself. And I think this is this too good behaviour. I get it. Marcus Rashford is a public figure. You know, at the end of the day, he's got a reputation to uphold. But this Mr. Too Good, I said to myself, hang on a minute. So you're apologising for having a natural reaction because you're scared of what people will think, because you're trying to uphold this image of being unblemished or this image of never losing your temper or never getting angry. As far as I'm concerned, you'd lost the match. You played your heart out. You're walking back to the coach and somebody's hurling abuse, and then you turn around to react. Obviously, the security guards are there, so you're nowhere near the person. You're just reacting. And yet, you're now apologising. But the person that held the abuse is not apologising. And my thing is, when you offer too many sorries, yeah, I've realised, when you offer too many sorries, people will give you something to be sorry about. Some of us, we need to hold this sorry sparingly. Because I feel like when we give too much sorry, people will set you up to get some sorry. You're apologising. The guy will now sue you now for hurt feelings from across the way. And to Ian Wright's point, like, you can't, why are you apologising? What is the reason? What did you feel that you did so wrong you have to apologise? Because you wasn't perfect. But no, why? And I almost feel sorry for Rashford, because I feel like he's in a position now whereby he can't just be himself. Very sad. Talk about sorry. You know what? There's something that Kelechi Okafor from Say Your Mind podcast says, and I agree with her. Because me too, I'm a dickhead in recovery. But my dickheadness is as such that when I'm being a dickhead, I don't even realise I'm in recovery. I'm just a dickhead without a cause sometimes. I'm not perfect. I have a podcast episode called Mistake, and I talk about it in the context of work. As far as I'm concerned, when I've done something wrong, I'm going to tell you I've done something wrong. If we're at work and I've made a mistake, I'm owning up to the mistake. Because I need you to know that when I cut, I bleed just like you. I've gone past the stage of my life where do too good. Because the problem is when you do too good and you make a mistake, people will just be looking at you like you've done the worst thing in the world. Better you, when you make mistakes, and I'm not saying make intentional mistakes, but when you make mistakes, own up to them. So people know that you're human. Because I feel like society is very committed to seeing black women as superhuman. I'm not superwoman, I'm just a woman. You understand? There's no super in my womanhood. I'm just a woman. And I think we need to be careful in the world of work when it comes to that, because I feel as though if you aspire to be perfect, you don't allow yourself or give yourself permission to grow from some things that you get wrong. You don't get born into understanding how to do your job or how to do your career. You learn these things. And these same people who are basically trying to flog you for making mistakes, they too had to learn the job, and they too are making mistakes, because we're all human beings. It's actually how you seek the positive out of the mistakes you make and allow it to feed into your growth to make you better. That's how I look at things. I have been in situations before whereby I was pulled up in a meeting, this was years ago, and I was told that I had too many spelling mistakes in my emails. Now, you and I both know that I am dyslexic, and I'm never going to, and it's my personal choice to not divulge to my employers that I was dyslexic, and I still don't, and I've got a podcast episode about being a professional and being dyslexic, so go ahead and have a listen to that. That's my personal choice. I make no judgment on anybody who chooses to share that with your workplace. But as a black woman who has a target on her back, because I advocate for myself, I already know that I'm not going to give you another opportunity to be able to have anything to judge me on or to use to flog me. That's not going to happen. So you're pulling me up because I'm making mistakes. Then I had to also go into my feedback folder to pull up an email where she made mistakes and she actually spelt my name wrong in every single email. Just to show her that nobody's above mistake. And I do that, you know, in my feedback folder. Anytime a manager makes a mistake in an email, I keep it, just in case. Because I have to preempt the fact that because I have dyslexia, there are times when I am going to make mistakes. So for example, if I'm really tired, I'm going to make a mistake in it. The likelihood is there may be a mistake. And if there is one, I hold my own. No one's perfect. But when the managers are making their own, I make sure I keep it in case, because some of them are mad. I've been in that position before. I read my emails about 10, 15 times before I send it out, and that's just me, right? But I think there needs to be no acceptance that you are going to make a mistake. So back to what I was saying. So I recognise that I'm a dickhead in recovery, right? But if I've wronged somebody, I own up to it. Because you're not going to beat me. It's the truth, you're not going to beat me. And also as well, I feel as though it's important to own up to when you've done something wrong. Workplace, friendship, whatever the situation. I'm just one of those people that I stand in my truth, and sometimes my truth is very smelly. I will still stand there 10 toes deep in my Crocs. Yeah. So I had a friend, and somebody who I thought was a friend, but I realised that she was a friend insofar as it was self-serving, and that's okay. You know, at the end of the day, you know, maybe I didn't figure it out straight away, but I realised it, right? She's the one that I told you that, I don't know, in secret, when she did a podcast and didn't even tell me about it. It's like, we're supposed to be friends. You come to me for everything else. You know, when you need consulting on becoming a contractor, you came to me. When you needed an accountant, you came to me. I gave you an accountant. When you needed to set up your business, I told you how to do it. But suddenly, when you are doing a podcast, you know, we're supposed to be friends. You're doing it in secret. Like, what's the secret? I personally didn't understand it. And there's no duty for her to tell me, but I'm just like, you tell me everything else, so I don't understand this. Anyway, whatever. I definitely feel as though the friendship, we just kind of grew apart. And I think for me, I'm one of these people that I'm very focused on what I'm doing. And I feel like to be friends with me is to understand that sometimes I will disappear and I will kind of be in my own world, and I recognize that every friendship has different needs, and that's what the beauty of friendship is about. It's about understanding, it's about growth, and it's also about covering and being able to cover that friend. And I definitely feel as though, I mean, I had one running with her when we used to work together, and she made a comment, and she said something to the effect of, well, we all don't have money like you do, you know, because I'd already been a contractor before her. So I'd left this place as a perm and come back as a contractor. And she made this comment because we're putting money towards somebody's leaving card, even though she wasn't on the team of the person who was leaving, but I was. Okay, whatever. She just eggs up herself. She's like that. She's very eggs up. And I just find her to be a bit beggy. Oh, Toya, dickhead. Sorry, but she is a bit like that. She's a bit of a beg. Like, I noticed that with her. She's just, okay, this is an example. She's one of these people that if you are, I don't know, if she's at an event, she's the type of person that wants to make friends with the organizer of the event just to say she knows them. Sorry, but it's true. And if you're listening to this, I'm sorry, but it's true. You're very, and that puts me off people. I don't like people who are too eggs up and too beggy. Like that type of thing. Like, why can't you just exist in a space where you know that somebody, like, why can't you just exist in the confidence of who you are rather than feeling like you need to lick ass? And I don't know where that comes from with her, but maybe that's because, like, how I grew up, I know a lot of people, right? So I never felt the need to have to put myself out there like that. Anyway, I digress. So when I got engaged and everything, I told her, and I obviously put it on social media, but I tried to tell her before I put it on socials, and I did. And she just didn't seem very happy for me. I don't care anyway, whatever. Anyway, obviously I picked my bridesmaids and everything, and as soon as I done that, it went downhill. And I think partly because I didn't pick her to be a bridesmaid, or maybe I didn't have a conversation before picking my bridesmaids with her. I don't know what the normal protocol is. I just know I'm a dickhead in recovery, and people need to just pay attention to my recovery, innit? Anyway, we kind of just stopped talking, and she then blocked me from all social media. But before she blocked me from Twitter, she put some, like, you know them people that do indirects? And my thing is, I'm going to come for you. Don't do indirects, because I will just call you out. And then I thought to myself, you know what? She's feeling in her feelings because I didn't pick her to be... Because I can't think of any other reason why you're acting like this, like you're in your emotions. But like, be an adult and use your words, you know, whatever. But I kind of felt like, personally for me, I didn't handle that situation very well. I feel like if I take myself out of my dickhead in recovery and I look at this, you know, like, if I look at this holistically, I think what I should have done is I should have called her and said to her, listen, I'm getting married, I would love for you to be one of my ladies, but when it comes to bridesmaids, there's like a couple of people that I've known for longer. I should have maybe had that conversation, because I feel like if I already know that this person is slightly a bit more sensitive, then if you're going to call this person a friend, you have to speak to them on the level and in the language in which they will understand, okay? And I felt like I did away with that. And I should have had more care, because I have enough emotional intelligence to understand that that's something that I should have done. And it wouldn't have cost me anything, it wouldn't have taken away from me, and I didn't deal with her emotions with care. So it's been maybe almost a year now we haven't spoken. So I sent her a message. So I said, hi, whatever, you know, her name. I said, I hope you're well. I want to apologise for hurting your feelings and also not acknowledging them at the time. I also apologise for not communicating at the frequency we had always done. I hope you are doing well. Take care of yourself. Toya. Now, for me, when you're apologising, it's taking responsibility for where you went wrong. Yeah? And the way I believe apologies are, I'm not looking for a response from you. I'm apologising because I did wrong. Yeah? And I'm offering that apology. If you choose not to take it, that is your prerogative. But it's important that I acknowledge where I have gone wrong to you and apologise without excuse and without justification. And that's what that was for me. So I wasn't expecting to get a response, and I didn't need one, because that's not why I sent it. So I'm going to read her response. Hi Toya, hope you are well. I have been debating and contemplating how I want to respond to this message. So before I do, I have a couple of questions. I don't believe I have communicated any hurt feelings, so just want to understand where the apology came from in regards to feelings, ? I accept the apology regarding communication and would like to understand why the communication stopped and why you are reaching out now. I don't have time for any of these Judge Judy questions. Acknowledging I'm a dickhead in recovery, it's emphasis on the recovery part. Okay, cool. Now, when I read this, I said to myself, this sounds like hurt feelings, darling, to me. And also, you're the one that blocked me on every social media platform. I had to send you a text message because you blocked me on WhatsApp. So you can't tell me there's no hurt feelings. But this is what happens when somebody is emotionally immature in doing the introspective work and being honest with yourself. And this is why her and I couldn't be friends. Because I feel as though, in as much as I'm a dickhead in recovery, I was a dickhead. But I acknowledge where my dickheadness sits. She, unfortunately, doesn't have the capacity, or maybe she doesn't have the range within herself to be able to be honest enough with herself. And that's fine, because everybody goes on their journey of life differently, at different speeds, at different pace. But then you're asking me why my apology has come now. I'm sorry. Do you wipe my bum? I'm sorry. Do you pay my bills? I'm sorry. Are you mad? why is it coming now? Are you actually mad? People you've offended before, do they apologize to you? Don't give me that shit. Then, obviously, because I'm a dickhead in the recovery stage, I recognize that part of recovery is understanding you're going to be challenged. And there's no point to drag her. Because I could drag her through her nostrils. But I thought, you know, Toya, you're bigger than this. And this is maybe the test of how you're recovering from your dickheadness. Just silence is the best answer to a fool. So I just didn't even respond. The reason I'm talking about this in terms of apology and Rashford and things like that, I feel like it is important for us to often take a step back and look in the mirror and be able to understand where we have gone wrong in our character and our handling of people. How people wish to take your apology is up to them. And you cannot judge, you can't dictate how they process your apology. For me personally, what I'm not going to do is justify my apology to you. I ain't gonna do that. I was wrong. I've acknowledged I was wrong, and I'm rendering an apology. If you choose to kick it to the ground, put it in the bin, that is your choice. But what you are not going to do is ask me why I'm apologizing. Now, one of the other questions is, why did the communication stop? Well, bitch, dickhead in recovery. Well, it stopped because you blocked me, darling. You didn't give me the opportunity to have the communication with you. You didn't give me the opportunity to address it with you because you were doing subliminals on Twitter. When those fat thumbs were typing, you wasn't thinking. You were trying to draw me out and you didn't get to draw me out, and you were pissed that you didn't draw me out. You ain't going to control these emotions, darling. When you are apologizing, you have to really believe in the apology that you are rendering in order for it to be authentic. Authentic apologies isn't waiting for the response. Authentic apologies are putting the apology out there and hoping that it's being received in the best way. And if it's not, fair enough. People may not even be ready to receive your apology, you know. But it's okay for you to give your apology and allow people to park it where they want to park it. This one wanted to park it in the red zone. That is up to you, darling. Ain't got nothing to do with me. I don't know why I've been prompted to share this with you. Those who have ears, let them hear. And those who don't, allow them to feel. Focus. It is so important that you find your focus, because in not committing to finding your focus, you're going to be like a train on a fast train to nowhere. Focus is what allows you to understand the path and the journey you have to take to get to where you want to go. Focus doesn't necessarily mean suffering, by the way, because I feel like people conflate focus to suffering. So, for example, for a year and a half, Kay and I were focused on building a house. I woke up one morning, I said, Kay, this is what I'm thinking. I think we need to buy a house. We've bought the flat, but I feel like we need more space. And we were looking, Zoopla, what is the other one? Rightmove. We were on there all the time. In fact, it was part of my day. I loved looking at houses. And then we had to find an area, and we whittled it down to maybe 4 different areas. And we had to do extensive road trips to understand these areas and how they would fit with us. And then we found so many houses, but we didn't really find one that we were like, yeah, that's the one. There was one that was, I would say, close to being the one. But again, you know, because it's so far out of London, you had to drive everywhere. And I'm not the type of person, you know me, I don't really like driving. I drive because I have to, not because I necessarily want to. So for me, going to the park, you had to drive to the park. There's no local shop, you have to drive to the shop. So I said, Kate, this isn't the place. And God's so kind. We were so focused on what we wanted that we were drawn to certain places and developments. And this is how we stumbled on the possibility of building a house. Now remember, as I am focused, because what you guys don't know is this was on our vision board. So we have individual vision boards, Kay and then we have a family vision board. The family vision board is full of different pictures, and then they have buzzwords. When we've created the family vision board, it's the same family vision board for the last 2 years. The family one hasn't changed. When we were putting together the family vision board, we didn't necessarily at that point we didn't know we wanted to actually invest in a house. We didn't. Everything on that family vision board is the house. From the furniture inspo to some of the buzzwords, there are so many pictures on here that are the very house that Kay and I have built. Focus. The family vision board is above my desk. And my personal vision board is above my desk too. So every single day I sit at this desk and I consult, I do my job, I do, I'm remembering my why. I have focus. There has been so many nights that I've worked late, so many times that I, have had difficult situations. And I'm not going to sit here and say it's easy, because when you're going through them situations, you're not thinking about your vision board, but you are focused. I'm going to share with you a mantra in the new year that me and one of my friends, we were discussing this mantra, and I said, right, it's going on my vision board, and I'm going to read it to you. Your greatest challenges are your biggest blessings. Don't give up before the magic happens. You're leveling up. That has been my mantra for this new year. Focus. When you have a focus, it gives you a reason. When you have a focus, you are speaking and leaning into your purpose. When you have a focus, you have a destination. What people don't realize is when you are in the world of work, those of you who do not have objectives and don't have a focus often find yourself disillusioned quite quickly because there's no plan. You go into the world of work, and some of you it's just for money, and that's okay because the bills have to get paid. But people who are wanting to develop a career have to have a focus. That focus can come in the way of a vision board, or can come in the way of objectives, or both. When I go into a contract, so when my recent contract that I left, do you know what my focus was? To get experience in a niche industry, in a particular niche industry that I was currently in, and to work on some of the highest value projects in that niche, because I know that by the time I'm ready to have kids, I have to have peaked in my career, so that when I go off on maternity and I'm coming back right to the same place. That was my focus. My focus was, I need to be on a certain figures. So this is my plan. And I got it. Okay, I feel like we need to buy a house now. What are the things you want in the house? Kay said, I want my own study. I want you to have the option to have your own study or a creative space. We need to have a meditation room. We need to have some spare rooms or a spare room. And we need to have a wing that is just the master wing. No one else goes in there but me and you. That was the focus. Every weekend that we could, we were in that car, driving, clocking mileage. Because you see, when you're focused, you have something to work towards. You are building what it is you're focusing on so that you can reap the benefits of the time that you've sown into that focus. If you do not make certain things your focus, you're going to be like somebody who's drunk. And when you sober up, there's confusion. We are operating in a society that doesn't rate us as black people. We are working and living and breathing in a society that mistreats us as a community. So if we don't have personal focus in the things that we're trying to achieve, this society can easily distract us. Focus doesn't mean pain. Focus does not mean suffering. Focus means a vision, a destination. That's what focus needs. And some of you do not have focus. Some of you have focus for TikTok. You'll be there for 2 hours, but you don't have focus on your career. Some of you have focus on dating, but yet you don't have the same energy for your career. Some of you have focus on a waste man, but that energy, you've never focused it into your career. And then you're wondering why you're not seeing success. How can you see success where you have not sown? How can you reap there if you haven't sown it? If you haven't made certain changes to be able to attain the success you want, if you have not been able to maintain the focus, how are you going to get it? You know, some of you guys will believe in this New Year's resolution. This is March. How far are you in that resolution? Resolutions are distractions. New Year's resolutions are distractions. And I've told you guys before, I don't believe in all that. It's bullshit. Because them New Year's resolutions are as valid as that month of January. And that month of January is bullshit. Because that's the longest month ever for some people who were paid early in December. January is bullshit because you still have residual headache from December. January is bullshit because January never makes sense to anybody. The New Year starts from February, let's be honest. So this New Year's resolution don't mean shit. I was more focused on my vision board. I had COVID in December, so really my December was January and my January is February. It's really difficult when you're not in a good space to have focus. It's really, really hard. And this is what I say to you guys in the manifestation podcast episode that I did. I think I did that in 2020. How can you manifest something you can't see? How can you focus on something that you haven't spent time trying to manifest? How? On your vision board, if you have one, is the focus there? Because my thing is, you don't necessarily have to have one focus. You can have different focuses, but you need to be able to see what those focuses are. So for me, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 focuses. And they have headings. One of them is private, so I can't tell you what that is. The other one is Toy Talks, personal targets, personal development, traditional wedding, and being kind to myself. And underneath those headings, they have certain things that I have to achieve. Those headings are my focuses, and everything that sits underneath those headings are the sub-focuses that I need to focus my mind on to achieve. You know, I got quite a lot of messages from people who were saying to me, wow, Toya, you really do move in silence, you know. So all this stuff that you were going through at work, you were still building a house. I said, yeah, because I was focused. I knew what I wanted, and I had to make some sacrifices, but I didn't have to sacrifice myself to manifest those focuses, and that's the difference. So my question to you is, what's your focus? When you talk about careers and your career, what is your focus in your career? What are you focusing on in your present job to achieve for you to get to the next level? You know, we need to have that conversation. It's like when you're on a roundabout. You need to focus on your exit, you know. Because if you miss that exit, you will be going round and round about. Round and round and round. I'm focused on the second exit. I can't be on the third lane. I have to be on the second lane. Because the first lane is for people turning left. I ain't turning left. I'm going to the second exit. So I need to be on the second lane. Focus. Some people are going round and round about. Round and round and round. No focus. Don't know what exit they're taking. Just going round and round and round and round and round. Unless you have a focus, you will not be able to achieve what it is you need to and take the exit to the next level. And until some of you are ready to have that chat, you're constantly going to be asking yourself questions about what success looks like for you, why you haven't achieved certain things. What I don't want people to do is get to the last quarter of the year and still be having no focus. You can't be listening to my podcast and be committed to having no focus. It's not going to work. Amongst everything that was happening, remember the grievance complaint, closet racist episode? I was going through a lot, and yet still managing a grievance complaint. I was still building a house. I never lost focus. You see, what happens is when you're focused on something, the devil will always bring distraction. Because when something great is about to happen in someone's life, the test comes before the testimony. Facts. Let me give you an example. Kay and I were then focused on building a house. We weren't seeing what we wanted. When we did see what we wanted, we had to compromise. I was, let's build this house. We're going to work with a developer. We're going to employ our own, hire our own architect. We'll use the architect that the developer's using as well, but we'll have our own. We're going to have this, we're going to have this, we're going to have this. Do you know, before we knew which developer we were going to use, Kay and I went through property discrimination. Let's get into it. Obviously, Kay and I are going to view houses. And we had our mortgage in principle ready. We had our mortgage in principle ready because in the beginning, we thought we were going to buy a ready-made house. We didn't know we were buying a plot to build. We didn't really realize that. But this is part of the journey. When you're focused on something, you go through the motion, right? So there was a particular estate agent that was managing a development for a developer. So Kay and I contacted them. And we wanted to set up a viewing because they had a show home. So they said to us, and it was an attitude. Oh, okay. Because obviously we gave our last name. So at the time, I was using Kay's last name because we were about to get married. Okay, so I'm using your last name. And me, I was practicing because I wanted to hear how people would say my name with his last name. Weird, I know, but hey ho. And they were like, when do you want to put the appointment? We told them, and they said, before you book an appointment to see the show home, we need to know how serious you are. So I was like, what do you mean how serious we are? We want to come and see the property. They said, we need to do affordability checks. I said, okay, that's fine, but we've already got a mortgage in principle for X amount of money. So clearly the bank think we can afford this. So why would you do affordability check when we have mortgage in principle? I can send you the mortgage in principle. No. We still need to do affordability check. I said, something's not right here. It's just weird. But anyway, went through the affordability check. They didn't even want to see the mortgage in principle. Nothing like that. So we went down to that particular development. When we got there, we had an appointment. The woman looked me and Kay up and down. Like, I was dressed in a tracksuit. If you know anything about me, I'm not going to wear heels to go to something if I'm not comfortable. I don't feel comfortable in heels. I feel comfortable in a nice retro tracksuit and wicked trainers. Yeezys, anything. And I look cute. You understand? If Steve Jobs can wear the same polo neck, yeah, every time I see him, I must be able to wear what I like. That's on period. But why is it okay for white people to look scruffy and they will be told that they're modest? But if I wear a tracksuit, suddenly I'm unserious. With my expensive trainers that's worth everything that you're wearing, you're very mad. Anyway, the woman said, can you stand over there? So me and Kay stood there. I'm looking at Kay thinking, what is this here? Because I'm getting irritated at this point. Did you pass the affordability? I said to the woman, if we didn't pass the affordability, how would we have been able to secure an appointment? Oh, do you think you'll be able to get a mortgage in principle? I said, excuse me, we're not doing this, all right? You asked for affordability checks. We went, did your affordability check, and now we are here today because we clearly passed it. Whether we're able to get a mortgage in principle or not was not a prerequisite for this viewing. So, unless you're going to let us view the property, the conversation is over. We went to see the showroom. We wasn't going to take it and we were not interested. But one of my close friends, I told her about it. I said to her, I think it's because Kay and I are black. Because the other white people, they weren't treating them like that. They didn't ask them to stand aside, frog marching them. Why were they doing that to us? Potential buyers here. So I said to my friend, why don't you call them up and tell them you want to view the show home and see what they say? She's like, all right, cool. My sisters and any brothers that are listening, do you think they asked my friend for affordability check? No, they didn't. Do you think they asked my friend for MIP, mortgage in principle? No. When she called me and told me, yeah, I booked an appointment, I said, did they ask you affordability? She goes, no, they didn't ask me anything. I said, you know it's because you're white, innit? You've got a white name. They know you're white. She said, Toya, I'm so disgusted. I said, yeah, but this is how it goes. This is, even in a position where me and Kay can afford to buy 2 of them houses, we will never be seen as good enough because of the colour of our skin. They think we're time wasters. They think we're coming here to do a visit. They think we're on tour. Simply because of the colour of our skin. And then to compound it, they're then judging us when they see us by what we're wearing. Not knowing that not only have we got a healthy mortgage in principle, we can afford this and afford it over and over. But I recognise that when you are focused, there will always be a test before the testimony. And the test is, these type of situations will throw you off guard. They'll be like, oh, there's a type of frustration you will feel. You'll just be like, maybe it's not the right time. But Kay and I were focused. Kay and I probably visited about between 10 to 15 developments. We spent a lot of hours going to different areas, driving around, accidentally finding areas, doing this. We spent a lot of time. Focus. We had a plan. The plan was we had to shortlist at least 3 to 4 areas. Within those 3 to 4 areas, we had to look at schools, we had to look at developers, we had to do our research, we had to do our due diligence. Who are the top developers? Have they got developments in those areas? If they have, what are the ratings? What are the forums saying about these developers? Focus, a plan. A plan provides focus. Little did we know that our focus would turn out to be our biggest blessing. Because from there, we accidentally found an area. We were driving, we would come back from a development, we were disappointed. After all, only 2 weeks before, we were being told that we're not good enough for a particular development, treated like shit. We'd spent time. As we're driving back now, you know these motorways, when the signs start changing colour, you know you're out of ends, innit? We're driving. Then Kay said, he mentioned the name of the area that when I was driving the motorway. I said, Kay, remember that name. When we go home, we need to research it. I don't know why I said that. We got home, we researched it, we're like, wow, we've not seen this before. Did the research. Focus. Because we had an objective. We wanted to buy a house. We didn't understand the steps in buying this house. We didn't realize that part of this step, because remember we're in COVID. So we're not realizing that part of the steps would have to also be all this additional research that we're doing. Because when we bought the flat, it wasn't like that. It was very simple. It's very straightforward. But the house is different. Because we knew that this house will be forever and now. We knew we're going to be spending a lot of money on this house. More money than I think both of us were initially comfortable with. Because it's just a big responsibility. But we had a plan. When I researched this area, I saw that there were 6 key developers in that area. We had to go there. We drove down there. We went around. Then we went to a show home of a particular developer. And they said to us, they have ready-made houses. So they can show us their work through the ready-made houses if we want. Or we can buy a plot and work with them to build the house that we want. And we get to customize the kitchen, we get to customize this, we get to do this, you can do this. We said, okay, let's have a look. This is how the house build came about. There was delays, there was stress. Imagine you're having a meeting. I'm holding down 2 contracts. Kay is holding down a very highly pressurized job. Kay works in finance. Then we're having Zoom calls with our architect, their architect, site manager, developer, their lawyer, our lawyer. And me and Kay have never built a house before. We just knew that we wanted a forever and now home. Focus. And every time I looked up at that vision board, focus. Every time I looked up at the family vision board, focus. This is what I said to you. Put your vision boards where you spend the most time. Because where you spend the most time is where you spend the most focus. If that is where you spend the most focus, you're able to manifest the things that you are focusing on, because you are managing and planning how you're going to achieve the outcome of that focus. Stop deceiving yourselves. Stop it. Some of you are deceiving yourself by living vicariously through other people. That's not focus. That's called distraction. That's called admiration. Find focus to find your manifestation. You can only manifest the things that you can see. Our entire family vision board is the house and some. Every single time we came home disappointed, we were able to stay focused because we had a plan. We had focuses. We'd written it down. We had a vision board. We were able to look at it. During the house build, I'm going to tell you the truth. The first 2 months, Kay and I didn't know what the hell we were doing. We were relying on the subject matter experts that we hired to advocate for us and advocate for our vision. There was a lot of stuff we had to compromise on. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. We compromised on a lot of stuff. And there's a lot of things in hindsight that we could have done differently. But I know that this has happened the way it's supposed to happen. And we have a beautiful 3-story townhouse. And if you follow me on social media, you'll know how much I have loved townhouses. I love them. Even our local area where we live, sometimes I take a walk to the local townhouses because I am so focused on what I wanted to manifest, what we wanted to manifest. You put yourself in an environment to see those things so you can remain focused on what it is you want. I would go for walks during the lockdown near the townhouses, and they're beautiful. The brickwork, the finishes that you can see through the window, the architectural structure of these townhouses, beautiful terraced townhouses. And each townhouse where I live is custom made, custom built. You pay the extra, you get what you like. And sometimes I'll come home and I'll say, Kay, whew, did you see the townhouses on so-and-so road? Oh, beautiful. Sometimes we'll walk together because it's a joint focus. So we have to go together. And Kay will say, oh, this is beautiful. Toya, have you seen this? Oh, look, because some of these townhouses where we live, some of them are empty. So we'll go up to the window, we'll be looking, not knowing that in the focus, in the journey of the focus, God was allowing me to shape what I was seeing as our focus to be able to manifest. Every time I walk into the house, Kay reminds us that we built this. Anything is possible. Somebody wrote on my recent vlog, I thought it was only rich people in America that build houses. No! If you want something, go and research and find out how to get it. And I have 2 heads. I had 2 contracts running at the same time during a global pandemic. I was building a house. I got married last year. I was planning my registry last year. So let's not act as though one had a lot of time. I was busy and still putting out a podcast every single week, running my businesses as well as my career, holding down a home. Hello. If you don't find your focus amongst all the noise, you'll become distracted. On top of that, I've got apology rejectors and people acting out of pocket because I'm not making them bridesmaids, and I'm having to manage all these things. And don't get it twisted, people are having to manage me. If you don't stay focused, you don't find a focus in what you're doing, life will create the distractions to pull you off track. And that's not to say that you can't have downtimes. That's not to say sometimes you can't be disappointed. But I feel for myself, if I don't have a focus, I'm lost. And I've spent too much time in the wilderness. I've got a podcast episode called Walking in the Wilderness. I spent a lot of time walking in the wilderness. So one of the biggest lessons I learned from walking in the wilderness is to find focus. Because once you find focus, even if things feel quite convoluted, quite upsetting or distracting, you always have that focus to hone in on what you are trying to achieve. When you are working in a toxic environment and you have a focus, sometimes it's very difficult to achieve and attain or even see the focus when you're having to dodge lion, tigers and bears. But just because you have a focus doesn't mean that you have to suffer yourself in that environment because you're focused. Sometimes you could be so focused, but that focus doesn't necessarily have to live in that toxic environment. So for example, you have a vision of being a CEO of a company, but you know you have to rise up the ranks. The focus is to be the CEO. It doesn't necessarily mean to be the CEO you have to be in that particular environment. It may mean you have to climb the career ladder in different organizations to get to that CEO level. The focus is still the same, but the environment is different on where you will achieve that. And that's what I'm trying to get through to you. That whatever your focus is, you can feed it and you can water it. But where it manifests itself doesn't necessarily have to be where you think it is in that toxic environment. It isn't. So for example, some of the dilemmas I was receiving, one of them in particular, the young lady was so terrified of, making a grievance complaint because she wanted to get her mortgage. But she was being basically bullied in her job. And I said to her, no, you have to advocate for yourself because you're fighting for the same job you're trying to keep. You're fighting for it because you're so focused on the mortgage and getting that mortgage while you're in the job. Focus on getting the mortgage, because if you focus on the mortgage, you won't attach it to the job. You can get a mortgage in any job. Maybe just not this one. Maybe what God is trying to say to you is there needs to be a Noah's Ark. God is trying to wash it away, because God knows that if he gives you the opportunity to go through the mortgage application, you may have to cut it short because you've lost your job. Because this job is so toxic, they've forced you out of your job. So you're now through to the mortgage process, halfway through, and you lose your job. That's worse. If you focus on, I need to get my mortgage, and stop attaching it to this job, what you're doing is God is basically washing away this place, so that the next place you go to, God will create a situation for you. The ancestors will create a situation for you whereby you will get your mortgage, and you will get it in an environment whereby you're not having to pant and you're not scared that you're fighting for your job. And I said to the young lady, keep your mouth shut. Why are you telling your manager you're applying for a mortgage? She herself, she may not even have one. So she's probably thinking, why do you think you can have one over me? Move in silence. Move it. You don't need to tell people where your focus lives. And I don't know, some people, I feel like maybe you need the validation of what it is you're trying to achieve by telling other people all the time. Let me tell you something. When I was building my house, only 2 people knew. My very good friend Bimpe and my best friend Lisa. Outside of that, nobody knew when we were building it. As time was going on and things started to be achieved, and here now I can tell one or two people. But when it was actually complete, the only people that knew were my good friend Bimpe and my best friend Lisa. Those are the only two people. Because I don't need to tell my work. Imagine what I was going through in my workplace and I come to tell them, oh, I don't like all of this. Please, I'm trying to get my mortgage. Some of you, I feel like you tell these people where your focus lies because you're looking for sympathy. They're not going to give it to you. They don't even recognize us as human beings. Why am I going to tell them where my heart sits? Why? What's all that? Some of you are not focused enough. Because if you're focused enough, you don't tell people your kryptonite. Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? And the worst part of it is, let me tell you something. For those of you who have not gone through the mortgage process before, there's a point where you get your offer for the mortgage, right? And up until completion, you're on like a credit freeze. So you can't get any more credit until completion, and your circumstances can't change until completion. You know what I call that? Mortgage purgatory. That's what I call it. Because that's when the devil will test you. The devil will definitely test you. You can't leave the job because the mortgage offer, they say that if your circumstances change, you have a contractual obligation to tell the mortgage lender. It's mortgage purgatory. You can't get any credit, not even a phone, until completion. What more when you're building a house? Oh my God. And during that mortgage purgatory, the tests were coming. The tests were coming. You guys witnessed all the tests coming. But I was focused. I didn't tell not one person in my workplace, I'm building a house. Me. So that they'll go out and tell these closet racists and they'll be making my life hell. And then they'll frustrate me out of my job. I'm too focused for that. I had a goal and I'm going to achieve it. And this job is going to pay for it. My question to you is, what is your focus? How are you sewing into your vision boards to ensure that the focus is manifested? That's my question. Because I could sit here and give you as many examples, but it's about you. It's about you. The time you guys spend on the Shade Borough tells me that you can also spend that time on manifesting your focuses and developing what you want to focus on. Let's start holding ourselves accountable for the things that we manifest and the things we don't. Some of you are still what do they call that thing? There's a word for it. You guys are still carrying forward things from your vision boards from 5 years ago, but have no focus on how you're going to achieve those things. Carry over. Come like annual leave. Okay, you can carry things over, 100%. But my question is, if you're going to carry something over, you need to question why you haven't achieved that thing and where the lack of focus has come from that hasn't enabled you to be on the path of manifesting those things. When it comes to career, some people have different motivations. One of my motivations is I need to retire early. I need to enjoy my life. That's it. I don't want to be like my parents, whereby they never really planned for retirement. That dream of retiring to Nigeria was a dream because they never thought about how they're going to keep up the upkeep of all the house, land and build. So when you've built the house, how are you going to still have that residual income so that you can really be retired? Our parents didn't really think like that. Our parents were still in survival mode. And they will bring, my generation had that residual survival mode. If you want to break generational curses, you can't repeat the things that your parents done, that you now know is probably not the right way to do things. Our parents knew what they knew in their situation, and they made the best out of their situation, remembering that a lot of our parents came to certain countries to give us, their children, a better life. So that being said, we understand survival and the attitude they had about that gratefulness. Don't make a complaint about work, don't advocate for yourself, so you should be grateful. That subservient attitude, we understand that is the mindset in which our parents existed because of their circumstances. We're the generation that has social media, that talk and communicate. So to break those generational curses, we have to learn from their mistakes, and we have to be focused. There's that word again. We have to be focused on what it is we as individuals are trying to achieve. Listen, I say it all the time. Not everybody, when you have an artist, a musician, the success of the artist requires other people. Not everybody can be on the stage at the same time with the mic. You have to have a sound engineer, you've got a writer, you've got a producer. All those people are focused on a common goal. And that common goal is to create a hit for that musician on the stage. They all have a focus. You understand what I'm trying to say? Because there's a recognition that not all of them can be on the stage. Not everybody can be the star. For me personally, my focus isn't about being a star. My focus is just being great at what I do. Being able to deliver and make a change in my community for the greater good of this generation, the next, and the next, and the next. That's my focus. My focus is to be great at everything that I do. Try to put my best foot forward to be able to benefit my community and to pour into my community. My focus is the greatness of my fellow black women. That's my focus. When it comes to my businesses, that's my focus. In my career, my focus is to be an elite subject matter expert, whereby when they talk about commercial contract consultant, my name is in the mix, and it started already. People know about me. People know. I want to be able to work a few months in the year and that be enough for me, and I can focus on other things. I have to lay the groundwork now, but those are my focuses. What is your focus, and how are you putting the plans in place to be able to achieve the focus, to manifest those focuses? That's my question to you. Because we could talk about career all day, but unless you have a focus, you're on a fast train to nowhere. And that's the truth. So I hope you have received this podcast episode. Those who have ears, let them hear. And I ask you also to be kind to yourself. Please listen to the episode Walking in the Wilderness, because I feel like that episode is the beginning and this is the conclusion to that episode. This is the part 2 to Walking in the Wilderness. So make sure you listen to the episode. It's very important. I have a couple of dilemmas. So obviously dilemma section, in my head I call this what would Toya do. So that's what we're calling the dilemma section from now on, okay? Okay, cool. So let me read one of the dilemmas that I have received. Dear Toya, hope you're well. Could you please advise on the pros and cons of working with a limited company and you're taking the risk, I think she wants to say. I also want to take the risk and start locum work, but struggling with taking the risk. Well, that's life. Life is about risk. You have to have a focus. Even having a focus means taking a risk, taking a leap of faith on yourself, trusting that you are able to manifest the things that you are focused on. Now, people talk about, so when she talk about locuming, she talk about being a consultant effectively and the pros and cons of being a consultant. So I'm a consultant. I work through my limited company and I work outside of IR35. So at a certain point, I had 2 contracts. One was inside, one was outside. And I'm paid very healthily. It's very healthy. The highest I've ever been paid as a consultant in my career, right? Now, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. One of the reasons I got into consulting was actually my best friend. She did it first. And the biggest risk for me was uncertainty. I like control. I like to understand how much money I'm getting each month. I like to understand where I sit in terms of a role. You understand? And for a long time, I saw permanent roles as secure. But permanent roles are secure to an extent. The pandemic has told us that nothing is secure when it comes to job. Job insecurity is the only thing that is secure. You should be secure enough in understanding that job security doesn't really exist. It's a fallacy. The pandemic saw to that. It made us realise that a lot of organisations can't actually be tested because they're going to fail. And when they fail, you get made redundant. You understand? Okay, cool. So understanding that perm roles have a risk too, because when a new manager comes in, a new head of department, they want to put their stamp on everything. So you run the risk also of being made redundant. So there is risk built into every aspect of how you choose to approach your career. It's about having a strategy and making informed decisions about your career. And this is the reason why, for me, I've said it before, 2 years max as a perm in a role. And then I elevated, every 2 years I was elevating, to now I've gone into consultancy, I'm senior. Now, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. As a consultant, there's risk, right? There's risk built into whatever the market is doing in your chosen field. So in my chosen field, the market is very buoyant. It's the most buoyant I've seen it in the last 3 years. It's really buoyant. But there were times, especially like at the start of the pandemic, where I was off for 6 months. So I chosen that I didn't want to work for 6 months. I had enough money, I had enough savings, I planned for it. But it was quite worrying time as well, because even during that 6 months, it was quite quiet. And that's the risk, right? It's peaks and troughs. And sometimes it does go really quiet. And sometimes it is really busy. And I think another risk is not having a good accountant. Not having a good accountant is really risky, because you could be earning all this money and not being tax efficient and effectively working for HMRC because you're paying taxes through the nose and through every hole in your ears and your face and your eyes. It's painful. I've had a bad accountant, and that to me is a risk. So when you ask me, how do I advise of the pros and cons, I think the episodes of the podcast tells you a lot about the pros and cons. If you listen to the podcast episode, I say it, you know. I don't think there's any cons of being a contractor, other than the fact that you have to invest a lot of time in understanding how your specific industry works. I think a con would also be, I'm a bit of a worrywart. I worry a lot about certain things, and I've come to accept that when you become a subject matter expert, you limit your worrying, because there's always going to be work. I think the longest I've been unemployed for, and I say unemployed, but I'm not unemployed because I'm employed by my limited company. So what I should say is the longest time I've been out of an assignment, and it's not been my choice, has been about a month. I chose to take 6 months off. Do you understand? So I feel as though whatever the pros outweigh the cons. I don't really see it as a pros and a con. I just see it as, yes, it is a risk, but it is a educated risk. If you really know your market, you've got good relationships with agencies, and you've got a good CV, i.e. you've purchased a CV masterclass and your CV is just sexy. I have a very sexy CV. I'm sorry, it is. It is, I've said to you guys before, it is the Louis Vuitton, Gucci, Hermes of CVs. Sorry, but it is. Do you understand? I've worked for some amazing places. And this is the thing as well. Like, I feel like as a contractor, you get the opportunity to work for some really amazing places, and no one's questioning that you were in your last contract for 6 months, because on average, the minimum amount of time that you're offered a contract is usually about 3 months anyway. 6 months is good going. That means you've got an extension. Or maybe you were just given 6 months off the bat. And obviously, I've been able to climb my career ladder really quickly as a contractor, as a consultant, because I've worked in all these different places. But I think as a perm, you're limited in working for all these different places because you're a perm. I love the fact that in my contract, my notice period, I mean, if I'm not negotiating it, usually my notice period is a week or 2 weeks. If I'm negotiating it, it could be anything up to 4 weeks. So, you know, there's pros and cons in it, but I would say if you're worried about the risks, that means you're not sure of yourself. That's how I look at it. So I'm quite cutthroat about it, but it's true. And at the start of contracting, I wasn't sure about myself. I wasn't. I was being told that my face doesn't fit. Cool. I'll find an organisation where my face fits then. You know, and I think also the money you potentially can earn. As a contractor, you potentially can earn a lot of money, especially when you become more seasoned, you've got more experience, you become a subject matter expert. Like, you can potentially earn a lot of money. And I think financial planning is very important. Having the right accountant, as I mentioned before, is really important. But also having a focus in what you're trying to achieve. For some people, contracting is just about money. And that's still a focus. For me, it's not just about money. It's about getting to the height of my career, because I know the money will follow. Do you know what I mean? It works together. And I think also having the opportunity to be in charge of my own career destiny. If I don't want to work for a particular organisation, I don't have to, and I don't have to explain myself. I feel empowered through the opportunity to have choice as a contractor. So hopefully that helps you. And good luck. And I think you'll really enjoy being a contractor if you manage it the right way. And you listen to the podcast episodes about how to navigate, you have a strategy, you have an objective. Because even as a contractor, you need an objective. Anybody in the working world needs an objective. And you need a focus. So one more dilemma. And it's called advice on offer stage. Hi Toya, I hope you're well. Thanks for getting back to me. Huh? Okay, sorry. I had actually re-listened to one of your episodes and then listened to your negotiation masterclass numerous times and found the right way to deal with it. I find that your episodes are so rich that you get different points when you listen to them again and again. I didn't get the job in the end, five interviews, and even my recruiter was shocked. But these things happen, and now I have all the tools to navigate the interview or negotiation process better. Thanks for responding. So this young lady, she was at final stages of a job offer that was giving her a 10k salary increase to her current salary. And she took the move after 18 months. Anyways, my dilemma is that they are all in office 5 days a week. Okay, so this is the girl, this is the lady that basically was offered a job, but they're now moving to working in the office 5 days a week, and for her, she wanted to work from home, flexible working. Okay, cool. So she's basically just thanking me for the advice, and that's fair enough. That's lovely of you, thank you. So that's less of a dilemma, isn't it, really? But 5 interviews, I'm sorry. Any job that's the same 5 interviews, sorry, who are you? Are you working for the Pentagon? Not me. I don't have that type of patience, you know. I'm not doing 5 interviews, and even if I was a perm, I'm not doing 5 interviews. If it takes 5 interviews for you to figure out whether the right person or not, that basically tells me either your interview process is a shit, so you need as many people as possible to be interviewing because you're crap, or you have too many options. You've got too many options of candidates, so you're trying to frustrate me with your 5 interviews, and I will frustrate you by dropping out because I don't have time for that. And I think organisations are getting a bit more smart. I'd like to believe they are. Because this has now become an employer's market, an employee's market, a contractor's market, where we get to dictate a lot more than we used to. And if you've listened and watched or purchased the negotiation masterclass, you're able to negotiate right up to the things that you want. I work remote. I'm sorry. You're ringing me up and you're not starting off the conversation with remote. The conversation's done. And don't ring me and say to me, oh, it's a remote role, but you have to go in 1 day a week. Well, it's not remote, is it? Is it? No, it's not. As far as I'm concerned, I think, you know, we all have an opportunity now to dictate the terms. And whatever, and I've said this before on TikTok, I know I've said it before on a podcast, I'm going to say it again here. Whatever is agreed at interview stage is not contractual unless it's in the employment contract, not the offer letter, the contract. And even if it's in the offer letter, it should still say that it will be included in the employment contract, because whatever you agree at offer stage is to entice you to accept the offer. And moreover, the people that are there interviewing you, offering you heaven and earth, may not be there in 6 months' time. You may have a new manager, may have a new HR person, and they'll say to you, well, that's the agreement you made with them, you didn't make it with me. Whereas if you have it in the contract, it becomes a contractual term of your employment, and they have to honour it. And it's important that you hear word, because some of you are sending me dilemmas, telling me what happened at offer stage. But when I ask you if it's in your contract, you say, tell me no. What are you enforcing? Promises? You can't enforce a promise like that. There is a concept in contract law, a promissory estoppel, making a promise binding in the absence of consideration. But that is not what we have here. Do you understand? Everybody is giving lip service in an interview. Even you're doing lip service. After all, you'll be promising that you're heaven and earth. When you get there, you're a raging bull. So what more an interviewer coming to interview and telling you that their workplace is best in town? In fact, Trustpilot said they're 10 out of 10. These times, they've got about 10 to 15 grievances, all based on sex, race discrimination and harassment and victimization. No workplace is perfect. So knowing that would be that anything that's agreed at offer stage becomes a contractual term. And if an organisation is reluctant to put in a contract, it's because they don't want to honour it. Understand it now. Anybody who's making promises, you should be comfortable to put in a contract and make it legally binding. If you don't want to make it legally binding, you're spinning me a yarn. You're talking shit. You're gonna make me. You're making yourself into Pinocchio. It's not real. Do you understand? Please, do not find yourself in a situation where you are taking the promises that are not being contractualized, because you will pay the price for it. And Toya can't help you out of that one. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I hope you receive the messages in this episode. I hope it helps you. I hope it helps you focus, because that is the watchword of this podcast episode. Now, if you want to follow me on social media, which I will encourage, I am very active on Instagram. My personal Instagram handle is Toya_Washington. If you would like to follow the Toya Talks Instagram page, it's Toya_Talks. I am also on TikTok. My TikTok handle is Toya_Washington. If you would like to see what we do here, maybe it's your first time, or maybe you want to have a look at the masterclasses, go onto the website, toyatalks.com. I also have a YouTube channel called At Home with Toya. Obviously, when I was renaming it and rebranding it, I knew at that point Kay and I were building a house. That's why it's called At Home with Toya. Disclaimer, I will not be doing any home account. And I've explained it in my latest vlog episode. Go and have a watch. At Home with Toya. And make sure you just kind of keep abreast of everything we're doing here on social media, because I'm very active on Instagram. So make sure you subscribe to my social media handles. If you have a work-related dilemma, please email, and make sure you put the premise of what the dilemma is in the subject box. Keep it straight to the point as much as possible. Please try to remove the emotion, and send your dilemmas to hello@toyatalks.com. I will leave it here, and I will say to you all that I appreciate you. Thank you for listening and joining every week. If you are a new listener, welcome to the Toya Talks family, and make sure you are familiar with and acquaint yourself to some of the earlier podcast episodes. Make sure you look at the show notes. I do take time to write the show notes so it's clear what the episode is about. And please go and have a listen to some of the earlier episodes to really embrace the Toya Talks journey. I'm going to leave it here. I'm going to wish you all an amazing week, an amazing month. Until next week, Tuesday, my name is Toya Washington, and you have been listening to the Toya Talks podcast.